I can still hear the airport's fluorescent lights humming, a thin electrical whine under the announcements and rolling luggage and the slow, ragged sound of my own breath. I was half hidden behind a column at Terminal 3, the same column I'd picked in all our dry runs, watching the man I used to love stand in a check-in line he would never make it to. Jake's fists were clenched around his phone like it might float him if he gripped hard enough. The text had landed. I knew the exact second it hit because his shoulders fell out of their practiced posture, because his face did this small, awful folding thing, like he finally saw himself from the outside and didn't like the view. He swayed, stepped out of line, stared. He tried to call me. Call failed. Tried again. Call failed. He called Vicky next. Straight to voicemail. His mouth moved around some word I couldn't hear. Then he looked up as if maybe I was in the ceiling, as if someone might drop the right answer on a parachute into his hands. I remember thinking, this is what a consequence looks like. Not dramatic, not cinematic in the way movies make ruin look. Just a man with a suitcase and a sudden understanding that he isn't getting away with it this time. A gate agent called final boarding for some other flight. A kid cried. Someone laughed from the cafe behind me, and a spoon clinked against a mug. I watched Jake text a paragraph, delete it, text another one, delete that too. He finally settled for 3 words. Please call me. Then he just stood there with both hands pressed against his face while everything he had set in motion came down like glass. You don't ever plan on becoming the kind of person who watches her boyfriend's world collapse from behind a column with a cappuccino, but you also don't plan on staying up until 3 in the morning begging him to believe the truth when he's already decided he loves the lie. That morning, I wasn't sorry. Not even a little. I wasn't born cold. It's a temperature you grow into. The thing about the last year with Jake is that it never starts as a horror story. It starts like a pleasant room where the temperature is perfect and someone you love hands you a blanket and says, you look cold, and you think, wow, thoughtful, and pull it up to your chin. By the time you realize the windows are nailed shut, the blanket is heavy, and the heater's broken, it's already winter. 3 years with him. The first 2 normal mostly. He was funny in that loud way good barstools reward. He loved wings, a very specific shade of blue, and taking pictures in front of gym mirrors with captions like, no days off. He knew my favorite dim sum place and how I liked my coffee, cinnamon and a stupid amount of creamer. The first time I got sick, he drove across town for my favorite soup and ran me a bath and tucked me in with a kiss on the forehead like in those movies everyone hates to love. It felt safe. It felt like someone had finally picked me and meant it. I can tell you the first time I noticed the turn. It was a Thursday, the kind of Thursday that smells like copy paper and burnt coffee. My coworker Ryan texted, "Did you upload the Q3 tracker yet?" With a smiley face. I was in the grocery store deciding between 2 brands of almond milk like it mattered. Jake's phone pinged in the cart. He glanced down. "Who's Ryan?" he asked, the same way you ask what time a movie starts, a throwaway question, not a trap, not yet. "He's in operations," I said. "He needs the tracker. Seems awfully happy about a spreadsheet." That was the shape of it, not a fight, not even a jab, more like a connective tissue you don't notice tightening until you try to move and can't. After that, it was questions. Not just where are you, but how long will you be there? What route are you taking? Why did it take exactly 12 minutes to walk to the pharmacy? Do you know how long a person can spend explaining their own day before their day belongs to the explanation? I do. It's about 4 months. I started triple-checking traffic estimates before I left work. I turned receipts into alibis. I sent photos of my desktop screen to prove I was still at my desk. "You know what guilty people do," he said once on a Tuesday that stuck like gum to everything. "They get defensive." I remember the taste of my own mouth when he said it. I'd never cheated. Not in thought, not in word, not in deed. The closest I got to adultery was forgetting to tell him they'd changed the coffee machine at work. It took Teresa to pick the lock. Teresa's been my mirror since we were 15, and she cut me bangs in her mom's kitchen with safety scissors and the kind of confidence only teenagers and surgeons have. She can tell when I'm lying by the way I hold a straw. That night I texted, "Can you come over?" She was at my place before my phone put the bubble away. She found me on the couch with my legs tucked underneath me and my jaw set like I was chewing nails. "Show me," she said. I handed her the thread with all the accusations about being 15 minutes late from Safeway. She read it like a field report. "Again," she said. I nodded. She didn't answer. She unlocked her phone and opened an app and put it in my palm. Jake's dating profile. Active that day. Single and looking for fun. I laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. It was the air that leaves your body when you get punched somewhere you didn't know could hurt. A friend of hers matched with him by accident. Recognized him from my Instagram. Sent screenshots to Teresa because no one wants to be the messenger on that bomb without proof. She'd been collecting receipts for days, waiting to be sure. She was sure. There is a moment, an exact instant, where your body moves the furniture around your heart, makes space for whatever comes next. In that instant, everything you thought you knew about yourself becomes a question. Am I clever or cruel? Can I carry this weight? What is justice and what is hunger dressed in black? I could have confronted him. It would have been a familiar script. I'd cry, he'd say I was hysterical, I'd show him screenshots, he'd say they were out of context, maybe I'd leave, maybe I'd stay. Either way, he'd learn how to sharpen the blade he already had pressed to my throat. I didn't want a scene. I wanted a conclusion. Let's make a plan, Teresa said, and I loved her the way people love flashlights when the power goes out. We made a fake profile that night. Not mine, not hers. A third woman who loved dogs and lifting and whiskey neat. Teresa's friends sent us phrases that worked on him. I'm not looking for anything serious, and I hate drama. We uploaded photos you couldn't reverse search. We waited. We didn't wait long. He matched in an hour, wrote in 3 minutes, called me his crazy ex by the end of the night. I read that on my couch while he was at work and tasted iron. He sent vile things. Screenshots with other women making fun of my face. I gag when she tries to kiss me, he wrote to someone who typed back, "You're a saint." My hands shook. Teresa put her hand on mine until it stopped. 2 nights later, we added a third chair to the table. My cousin Vicky. I know what people imagine when they hear cousin. They picture a family barbecue and matching t-shirts. Vicky is a different sort of myth. She has the kind of face you say wow to without thinking. Tall where I'm average, colt-legged in those leggings social media, invented to sell more of themselves. We look alike if you squint. Same dark hair, same brown eyes, but the version of me that makes men turn their heads is Vicky. She loves me like a sister and owed me a favor for the kind of breakup that feels like removing a splinter with a sledgehammer. When Teresa and I slid the screenshots across my coffee table, Vicky went quiet. Then she said, "Okay, so we're going to end him. If you want to know where the plan came from, picture a heist board in a movie, string and pins, and a picture of an idiot man at the center. We didn't need the string, but we did need the schedule." Jake lived on Instagram stories. He tagged his gym daily with the exact hour he'd be there. He wore the same sleeveless hoodie every Tuesday and Thursday and posted the same mirror selfie like his life was a loop. Vicky got a guest pass from a friend and we put her on the treadmill next to his favorite bench press. She texted me, "Target acquired," and then, "He's looking." Then another text with just a laughing emoji and, "He bumped me by the towels by accident." By that evening, she had his number. By morning, he was using it. I didn't sleep that first week. I watched Vicky's messages come in like live updates from inside the creature. Compliments about her body. Jokes about how he could never date a girl who's high maintenance. Questions about whether she liked whiskey or wine. "You single?" he wrote. "God, yes," she replied. "You?" "Same," he wrote. "Single." The word hit like a rock through a window. He took her to a restaurant I had talked about for 2 years. I knew the price of dessert there, and the way the servers held their menus like fans. Vicky texted me a bathroom selfie from the Velvet Lounge, and I stared at it like it might explain everything. How 2 people can meet in the middle of your life and act like you aren't even standing there. If you're wondering why I didn't confront him then, it's because pain is only part of a story. Power is the rest. We weren't writing a scene. We were writing an ending where he didn't get to pretend he was the author. Vicky was perfect. She gave him just enough light to chase, a laugh he could earn, a soft maybe when he angled for a weekend overnight. She let him pay. He offered. She let him. He offered more. She let him again. She mentioned earrings in a window. He was back the next day with a box. She talked about a band she loved. Somehow he had 2 tickets by that afternoon. She mentioned her phone kept dying. He bought her a new one. "It's the battery," she said to him. "It's the principle," I said to Teresa when Vicky handed me the Stillbox device at my apartment with a grin, and I replaced my cracked screen with something that felt like justice. All the while, I played my part. I packed his lunches and folded his shirts in 3 neat stacks and answered his questions like there was a quiz. He'd come home late, smelling like perfume I didn't wear, and tell me I needed therapy for insecurity. "You haven't been yourself," he'd say kindly, the way a doctor says benign and forgets to add for now. "I'm sorry," I would murmur and wash the smell out of his collar. By week 4, we upgraded the plan. Vicky cried on his shoulder about never having a real vacation. He searched Bora Bora over dinner with me while asking if I thought our toaster was dying or if I just hadn't cleaned it lately. He learned room categories and the difference between an overwater bungalow and a suite that touches sand. He learned the word non-refundable. He learned it the hard way. He booked a mountain resort first. Work trip, he told me, loading fishing gear he didn't own into his trunk on a Friday morning. Teresa and I checked in an hour later under his reservation, my ID and smile and the fragile confidence you wear when you're walking on a tightrope you've strung yourself. The front desk didn't blink. We spent 2 days in robes, ordering room service on his last name, hiking with a guide he paid for, soaking in a hot tub while the sky went purple. He texted Vicky, "I'm sorry about your grandma. She doesn't have a grandma in this state." He texted me, "Caught the biggest trout." He even sent a stock photo to sell it. I saved it in a folder labeled fishy. Here is a thing I learned about men like Jake. They count on your silence to be the glue in the story they want. They don't plan for your silence to be the fuse. 2 months into the plan, the money started making noise. He sold a guitar he loved to a man who haggled too hard. He pawned the watch his grandfather gave him, then lied to his mom about a repair. He moved money from our joint account into his private savings with notes like utility correction, as if a lie becomes truth if you hold it at a 90-degree angle. He lectured me about my $5 morning coffee while repaying the 0% APR with the swagger of a hero. Around then, he came home with a ring. He did it in our living room where the carpet still had an iron mark from the time he tried to do something domestic and forgot how hot is hot. He had that look some men have when they decide to be noble and confuse it for being brave. He got down on one knee with a ring that made me embarrassed for the jeweler and said he'd realized some things and wanted to start fresh. I thought about Vicky's messages. I thought about the screenshots where he called me his Roomba that also pays rent. I thought about the night I smashed a glass against the wall when he wasn't home and Teresa came over and picked the pieces off the kitchen floor with a magnet she kept for craft projects. I thought about everything and said, I need time to think. He said he understood, then suggested I spend a few days at my parents' so I could clear my head. He wanted me out of the apartment to make room for a fantasy. I packed a bag and took it to Teresa's. I left the ring on the dresser like a paperweight for lies. The next morning, he called and asked if I'd consider taking out a loan to help him consolidate. He used the word like a life raft. He talked about teamwork. He talked about families. He used we like a magic spell. Let me think about it, I said, and my voice didn't even tremble. When I met him for coffee later that week, he looked like a man who had borrowed too much from the future. His leg jittered under the table. He had a stack of napkins he kept folding and refolding until they looked like a paper city. It's just a bridge, he said. A few months. Then I'll be back on my feet. I took a slow breath and said I could probably get $25,000 at a decent rate. The relief that washed across his face made me feel, briefly, like I was touching a live wire. There's one thing, I added. I need to see everything first. Accounts, debts, statements, so I know what I'm signing up for. He went still. Then the familiar tap dance. You don't need to worry about that, babe. I'll handle it. I do need to worry, I said, covering his hand with mine and smiling like a saint. Transparency, right? If we're going to build a life. He excused himself to the bathroom and stayed there long enough for my coffee to go cold. That weekend, I moved my grandmother's bracelet from the jewelry dish to the safe I'd rented at a bank where his last name meant nothing. I carried a box of photo albums down 3 flights of stairs like they were lungs. I changed my mailing address to a P.O. box. I gathered passwords like a farmer gathering fruit before a storm. Teresa helped me carry my boxes into the new apartment. You sure? She asked. Yes, I said. I didn't cry. In the middle of all that, Vicky pressed the gas. Bonus at work. She texted him with too many exclamation points. I can cover half the trip now. His reply came so fast it was almost a reflex. He booked the final leg that night. Bora Bora. Overwater bungalow. Non-refundable. Departing Friday 2 weeks from then. He had to borrow the last $1,000 from his brother. I didn't enjoy that part. I don't like collateral damage. But the trap was set. The 12 days leading to that flight felt like the seconds after you jump off a dock and before you hit water, both endless and immediate. Jake hovered around me in the apartment like a ghost who hadn't realized he was dead. He brought me coffee in bed, watched my favorite movie without checking his phone, touched my knee in the car just to touch it. People talk about narcissists like they are always villains in black coats. Sometimes they're just men who confuse need with love. 2 days before the flight, Vicky staged a wobble. My grandma's in the hospital, she texted him. He panicked. He asked if they could postpone. It's non-refundable, she wrote. It's fine. He sent flowers to my new apartment because she gave him that address and laughed about it with me while we cut the stems. The night before he left, I told him I needed space and was going to stay with Teresa for a few days to think about our future. He hugged me like I was an idea he couldn't quite hold and told me he hoped I'd have an answer by Sunday. He said business trip again and the word was brittle in his mouth. When he left for the airport at 7 a.m., I watched him on the building's security app the way you watch an old clip of a storm you live through. I saw him smile with his whole face, the way he hadn't smiled at me in months, and I didn't feel sorry. We followed in Teresa's car. Parked. Sat at the cafe with 2 cappuccinos and a blueberry muffin we never touched. At 8:45, Vicky hit send. The photo me, Vicky and Teresa, middle fingers up, eyeliner sharp enough to cut a net, and the caption, surprise. Enjoy your $17,000 vacation for one. Your girlfriend knows everything. Jake folded. He dialed. Blocked. Dialed again. Blocked. He wrote long pleading texts and then deleted them and settled for please call me. He stood there a long time like a man who lost the address to his own life. We watched until he finally pulled his suitcase toward the exit, moving like a diver walking through air in heavy gear. I didn't follow him out. I wasn't that kind of protagonist. I finished my coffee. Teresa slid her hand across the table and put it over mine like a seal. When I got back to the apartment to collect the last of my things, I left a letter on the kitchen table. It said everything. I knew I had proof, and if he harassed me, I'd send the folder to his boss and mother and post it online. It listed the transfers he'd made from our joint account and the loan he had taken out to fund his double life. I included photocopies of his late notices because the universe loves paperwork. He sent emails that night, first begging, then raging, then rebranding tragedy as misunderstanding. "We can fix this," he wrote. "You're being cruel. I made mistakes, okay? You know how I get when I'm stressed." Teresa curled her lip at that line and said, "Like an arsonist gets when he's sleepy." We ate lo mein on my new couch and deleted every email without opening the attachments. My phone buzzed with calls from numbers I didn't recognize. We blocked them all. He left a voicemail on my work extension crying. I saved it in a folder called Fire Drill. I slept for 11 hours in my new apartment the next night, the kind of sleep where you wake yourself with a soft half-laugh because your body can't believe there isn't a question to answer. I should tell you about the law, because I promised myself I'd make the truth legal where I could. I met with a lawyer named Kira in a small office that smelled like lemon oil and determination. She read the folder I handed her, the recordings Vicky had made, one-party consent state, the bank transfers from our joint account, the messages where he admitted moving shared funds into his savings until she calms down low. Kira drummed her fingers lightly on the desk and said, "We can do a few things." We filed a police report for harassment after he came to my building drunk at 3 a.m. and sobbed into my Ring camera, begging me to come down and talk like adults. I watched the live feed from bed and forwarded the video to building security with a calm I didn't recognize as mine. We drafted a cease and desist. We filed in small claims for my portion of the joint funds he'd transferred. We requested a protective order that set clear rules. No contact, no drive-bys, no late-night opera on my doorstep. The hearing wasn't a movie. It was a small room with gray carpet and 2 people on either side of a little fence. Jake tried to look clean and injured. He said we'd had communication issues, that I was sensitive, that he was working through things, and took it the wrong way. His voice shook. He tried to look at me while he talked like we were in a scene he could salvage with eye contact. Kira slid the printed screenshots across to the judge without commentary, the way a doctor slides a scan across to a patient. The judge's eyebrows went up at the message where he called me a Roomba. "That's demeaning," the judge said flatly, like she was reading a weather advisory. Jake flushed. He tried to talk about context. Kira pointed out the dates on the bank transfers. I watched my own face blink back at me from a courthouse monitor as the Ring video played, Jake weaving in and out of the camera frame, crying and pounding on the door, and heard my own voice on the clip, steady tired, telling him to leave or I'd call security. The judge didn't need much more. She signed the order with a blue pen and handed copies to both of us, her face bored, like she sets boundaries for breakfast. I walked out into the hallway with Kira and cried anyway, not because I was afraid, because I wasn't. Jake's mother called me one afternoon from a number I didn't recognize. She asked if we could talk. I told her I couldn't legally. She cried quietly anyway and said she didn't raise him like this and could I please forgive him, he was under stress. "Stress isn't a personality," I said and hung up carefully so my hand didn't shake. I learned the shape of my life without him. The new apartment was small, but it had a window that drank sun. I bought plants and kept them alive like a minor miracle. Teresa brought over a lamp shaped like a half moon and said, "For nights, you need proof." Vicky stayed on my couch the first 2 weekends because no one should be alone after burning down a house, even if it was a house that needed to burn. We ate late dinners at my little table and told the truth. I told them how I used to hold my breath at 5:50 p.m. because that was when Jake usually came home and the minute before his key hit the lock felt like being on the top of a roller coaster. Teresa told me about her first job in TV news and the first time she realized an adult could make a threat with a smile. Vicky told me she'd learned to watch the way a man holds a menu before she learned to enjoy ordering from it. "If he treats it like a test," she said, "he'll treat you like one too." We laughed until we felt wrecked and clean. I thought Bora Bora would be the last chapter, but it turned out just to be the pivot. The point in the story where the villain loses and the heroine realizes the real battle is with the version of herself who stayed too long. I wrote that sentence in my journal and then crossed out villain and heroine because I don't want to live a story where anyone has only one face. Work got oddly easy without the constant attrition of defending my day. I took on a new project and didn't feel the need to apologize for wanting it. My boss noticed. "You're louder," she said in a meeting with a smile, and for the first time in months I didn't feel the need to shrink to fit someone else's outline. I got a promotion with a pay bump that made the number in my head I'd been afraid of disappear. It turns out removing one man from your schedule adds hours to your life. I still had to untangle the knots he left behind. Credit card fraud alerts. An email from his brother asking if I knew where Jake had put the title to the Nissan because apparently he sold it to a guy from Craigslist, and now the DMV wanted a conversation. I replied politely and gave him Kira's email. I learned to say I can't help with that without explaining why. On a Sunday 3 months out from the airport, I packed the last box that still smelled like the old apartment, a box of old t-shirts and the blanket we bought for a picnic we never took. I drove it to a donation drop and handed it over and felt exactly nothing for it. I bought a new blanket on the way home in a color I didn't have to negotiate. There was a day mid-July when I saw Jake across the street by accident. The city's small when it wants to be cruel. He looked thinner, older, like someone had roughened him with sandpaper. He saw me. He lifted a hand like a question. I turned down a side street and kept walking. My heart beat hard and then relaxed. It was weird. Nothing in me wanted him to be suffering. Nothing in me wanted him to be okay, either. I wanted him to be like a story I read in high school, something I could remember if I needed a warning and forget if I wanted peace. He broke the order once, texting from a different number, a long midnight litany of sorries and if onlys. I screenshotted, emailed them to Kira, blocked the number. I slept. The next morning I made pancakes like it was a holiday just for me. At some point, the revenge fund we'd built like a little trophy stopped feeling like a monument and started feeling like a funny origin story we'd tell at a bar someday. Teresa and Vicky and I sat at my kitchen table one Friday evening and counted the cash one last time, creased bills smelling like 1,000 other fingers, then used most of it to book a 3-day spa weekend at a resort just outside the city. To commemorate, Vicky said and clinked her glass against mine. To metabolize, Teresa said, never missing the exact word. For 3 days, we soaked and scrubbed and lay on heated stones like happy lizards. We took exactly one photo each and posted them with neutral captions that said nothing and everything. Jake texted from his brother's phone to accuse us of cruelty. I turned off my notifications and slept. Here is the part one promise myself I would write down exactly once, to honor it and then let it go. The night before I went to Kira's office to file my small claims suit, I took all the screenshots, bank statements, photos, and recordings, printed them, and put them in the same teal folder I'd used for recipes back when I thought future meant us. I sat on the floor and cried for the girl who labeled a folder us and filled it with recipes. I cried for the groceries I rushed through and the 15 minutes that cost me a year. I cried for the way I glanced at my reflection before I went home to make sure my face wouldn't start a war. And then I put that folder in my tote bag and I stood up and I felt taller than my old fear. The small claims hearing was dull, which felt like a blessing. The judge asked brief questions about the joint account. We provided dates and dollar amounts. Jake tried to strong-arm the word misunderstanding into a shape that fit. It didn't. The judge ordered repayment of my portion in installments. He went red at the cheeks like a boy caught cheating on a spelling test. He looked at the floor when he left. I watched him go and felt nothing curdle or bloom. Just air. After the legal gears chewed what they needed, my life got quiet. Not boring. I don't believe in boring. Just quietly mine. I started running in the mornings because I liked the way my lungs sounded when I asked them to work. I bought a small terracotta pot and planted basil. It lived. I went to a therapist named Dana twice a month and told her the petty parts and the noble ones and didn't try to rank them. She asked me what forgiveness meant to me. I said, not a door I owe him. A room I owe myself. She nodded like I'd moved a piece to the right square. In late August, I went to my parents' house for dinner. My dad grilled chicken the way he does when he's nervous, and my mom set the table like she was setting an example. We didn't talk about Jake because they love me well enough to know the difference between a wound you bandage and a scar you leave alone. My mom asked about work. My dad asked about Teresa's new job. We ate ice cream in the backyard while the neighbor's dog barked at a squirrel and the sky did that late summer blue that makes you believe in something again. On the drive home, I rolled the windows down and sang along to a stupid song from high school, the wind flattening my hair, my voice cracking on a note, and I felt so clean inside my own life I wanted to write the feeling down. Sometimes I scroll back to that airport morning in my mind, freeze frame it like a learning tool. Not to savor it, though God, there was a dark, spicy satisfaction in watching Cosme defect, but to remind myself that I didn't set this fire without checking for exits. I didn't break a man, I broke a pattern. There's a difference, and I need to remember it on the nights I feel a ghost hand reach for mine in sleep. Here's something else I learned. Revenge doesn't fix the part of you that believed you deserved less. It can wake you up. It can be the slap of winter air on your face. But it's the soft things. Therapy, good friends, basil in a terracotta pot, a run that hurts in the right way, that stitch you back into your own life. Vicky said that over brunch once, chewing on an ice cube. Hard gets you out, she said. Soft gets you home. A year out, I found the ring in a drawer I hadn't opened since the move. I held it in my palm. It looked small and mean, a promise written in lowercase. I thought about selling it, about turning it into a night at a fancy restaurant or a ridiculous pair of shoes. Instead, I took it to the river and flicked it in with a mean little toss, watched it flash once in the sun like a tiny mirror and then vanish. There is probably a fish wearing my bad decision somewhere. I hope it feels fabulous. I kept one souvenir. A printed photo of me, Vicky, and Teresa at my new kitchen table with takeout containers and cash stacked like a miniature skyline, all three of us grinning like thieves. I taped it to the inside of a cabinet. Sometimes I open the door just to see our faces there, to remember the way we built a bridge out of something that used to be a wall. Some nights, if I can't sleep, I replay his final voicemail, not to feed the hurt, but to hear how far I've moved from it. The one where he says he's learning from his mistakes. I hope he is. I hope he learns to call the thing by its real name. I hope the next woman gets a different man than I met. But that hope is philanthropy. It's not duty. My job is smaller and harder. To never again confuse an accusation with an answer, to know the length of my day without asking permission, to trust my own clock. I used to think closure was a courtroom gavel or a tearful apology. It's quieter. It's a morning where you wake up and don't check a door you know is locked. It's a date where you say no, thank you, to a second drink because your voice says so. It's forgetting to take your phone into the shower and not running out for it when you remember. When I catch my reflection now, I look like a person. Not a defense, not a suspect, not a suspect's alibi. Just someone who knows what her face looks like in both good light and bad and likes it either way. I didn't give him forgiveness. I gave myself permission. There's a difference. And if I ever find myself in another airport, standing behind another column, watching someone else reckon with gravity, I hope it's because I'm early for a flight to somewhere warm with turquoise water, where the bungalows sit on stilts and you can see fish flicker underneath the boards. I'll pay for it with my own money I earned by speaking up in meetings and learning how to say what I want without coughing it into a smaller, safer shape. I'll sit on a deck with my feet in clear water and send a photo to Teresa and Vicky with a caption that says nothing and everything, and then I'll put my phone down and close my eyes and listen to the soft, old sound of a life that's mine. That morning at Terminal 3, after he left the line in the suitcase and the dream he bought on payments, I finished my cappuccino. I wiped a little foam from my top lip with the back of my hand and laughed quietly because I could, because, finally, there was nothing left for me to rehearse. I stood, tossed the cup, and walked toward the exit. The automatic doors slid open with that whispering sound they make, and the air outside felt like a new page, the same letters I've always had, but set in a type I finally chose.